When we are exposed to tragic shootings such as Las Vegas, it leaves us with questions about God's interaction in the world. If God is all powerful, why doesn't He eliminate all evils? If God is love, why does He allow so much hate? If God is holy, why does He permit sin? To summarize, we may wonder, is this the only kind of world that God could have created? God could have made any type of world, yet He chose to create a moral universe in which struggle, pain, and sacrifice exist, because freedom exists. Like an artist, it would be incorrect for us to judge God's masterpiece of creation simply by what we observe, without first asking what His intention was in making it. In this moral universe, our freedom allows us to say yes or no, and thus define our destiny. A moral universe is one in which we have a responsibility and duty to become who God, the artist, intended us to be. Without freedom, we could not practice virtue, and thus there would be no saints. Without freedom, there would be no heroes, without the possibility that cowards exist. Without freedom, there would be no patriots, if there were not the possibility to be a traitor. Without freedom, there could be no true love, without that possibility that the other could reject the offer. Without freedom, there would be no sacrifice, if the possibility of selfishness did not exist. The very possibility of evil and sin is tied to our freedom. We don't appreciate the virtues of love, obedience, and goodness without first knowing the vices of hate, disobedience, and badness. Taking away the doubts and dangers of life, where would the examples of heroism and love be that we celebrate in the wake of great evils such as Las Vegas? If we do not like the masterpiece of this universe that our God has created, then perhaps we have not fulfilled His intention. His intention in the book of Genesis was for us to be made in His image and likeness. His intention was memorized by each adult that study the Baltimore Catechism. God made me to know Him, to love Him, and to serve Him in this world, and to be happy with Him forever in heaven. And yet humanity quietly and collectively said that this was too boring. We must use our freedom to be something else. The creature must create him or herself in order to be truly free. The result? A moral universe defined by our intentions, that we loathe whenever we turn on the news. When we blame God for allowing us freedom to do good and evil, it is like looking at a first grader's writing assignment. We see the misspelled words, grammatical errors, and misshaped letters, and condemn the teacher for not taking the paper away and doing the assignment herself in a perfect and professional manner. Venerable Archbishop Fulton Sheen wrote, "Just as the object of the teacher is sound education, and not the production of a neat and well-written assignment, so the object of God is the development of souls, and not the production of mere biological entities." The readings today tell us that this vineyard, this moral universe, is a gift from God. This vineyard is leased to us in order to produce an abundant harvest of grapes. God's intention is that we use the grapes to make wine. Hence He placed a wine press at the center of the vineyard. Wine is always symbolic of God's presence in the Bible. Evil, by definition, is an absence of God and a perversion of His goodness. Failing the care for the vineyard yields wild grapes that make no wine, and eventually the tenants of the vineyard rebel against the gift giver. Sound familiar? So where does our hope lie? We are not alone in our struggle to be faithful Christians. In fact, the owner of the vineyard is still watching out for us and still expecting an abundant harvest. In the Old Testament, The prophet Elisha saw God fighting for those on the side of love, faith, and goodness. The king of Aram and his army surrounded Elisha and his apprentices in the city of Dothan, looking as if evil would overrun them. One of Elisha's apprentices cried out, "Master, what shall we do?" Elisha was granted a vision of God's armies coming to his rescue, and he said, "Do not be afraid, for there are more with us than there are with them." After being delivered from evil, Elisha prayed that his young apprentice could see God's invisible army. He saw that the mountain was full of horses and chariots of fire. God's spiritual force surrounds us in the midst of the worst of evils. For Venerable Archbishop Fulton Sheen said, "Evil may have its hour, but God will have his day." Finally, Pope Francis said, "We must not believe the evil one when he tells us that there is nothing that we can do in the face of violence, injustice, and sin. In fact, there are two things that we can do: call upon our God to fight evil, and ask him to help us fulfill his intention of who we should be."